Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today will be part 2 of our interview with Chelsea Hansen, Curator of the Washington Masonic Library and Museum.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our 3/4 of our usual hosts. We have Very Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles Lodge number 153 in Kelowna, BC. David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And I'm Matt Appel. I'm a member of Mill Creek number 243 up in Montlake Terrace, Washington. I always want to say that we're in Mill Creek because, that would make sense, but we're not. And so we have with us, again, Chelsea Hansen, who's the curator of the Washington Masonic Library and Museum. Chelsea, thanks again for coming on the show. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
We could give her that a title, the Amazing Chelsea, because in the beginning, while we were waiting to start recording and whatnot, she noticed in the background of Matt's photo there in his bookshelf, she could identify most of those books just by their bindings, and I'm like, wow. So that amazes me, because I wouldn't never, not even if I knew that was an encyclopedia set, could I say that, because I couldn't. I'd have to blow that up and all that. Very good. But that leads me to a question that I had made note of. Since becoming doing the job at the Masonic Museum, what's your favorite artifact?
Oh my gosh, that's hard.
And why is it your favorite?
So the thing that gets me most excited about an artifact is the story behind it. And, the more you research an artifact, the more of the story you can uncover usually. I would say one of the top ones is we have an apron belonging to Michael T. Simmons, who was part of the Simmons-Bush Party, that were the first American settlers north of the Columbia River. And the story behind why they were the first permanent settlers in north of the Columbia River is really interesting to me. They actually, so they set off from Missouri. The two friends, George Washington Bush and Michael T. Simmons, and their families decided we're going to go move to Oregon Territory. And Oregon City was their stop. Once they got there, however, after finishing the Oregon Trail, they realized that Oregon Territory had passed the Black Exclusion Law, which said that nobody of African American descent could settle or own land there. And that posed a problem because George Washington Bush was mixed race. So they very easily could have broken up the party, and Michael T. Simmons could have settled in Oregon Territory since he was white, but they decided, no, we're going to all stick together. And so they decided we're going to go up north where the law does not apply, north of the Columbia River, and they did that. And in doing so, they founded the first American settlements, which was Tumwater and nearby Bush Prairie. And Simmons later, a couple years later, moved to Olympia, where all the hubbub was happening. A lot of people followed suit. Americans followed suit and ended up settling there. And Olympia really was the first hub in north of the Columbia River of American settlers. And he was the first junior grand warden of Olympia Lodge, which was the first lodge that in Washington Territory. I love that we have that artifact, and it can speak to that history, and is very connected to the very earliest Masonic history in Washington. So that's one I always bring up. But there's so many others that I can go off on
Yeah,
a
yeah.
tangent
I
talking
realized it
about.
wasn't really a fair question because that would assume that you've gone through all the artifacts in that museum. And
Yeah,
that's another good question. Have you actually gone through all of them?
not at all.
Oh,
I would say we've done like a thorough inventory and processed about maybe 15% of what we have. I mean, I've done a very surface level inventory because we've had to box everything up and move it out of the area, the museum, because we're getting ready to do a complete redesign of the space. Um, and so things are in boxes with very surface level inventory, but I haven't been able to really dig deep into to almost most everything, 80%. So I continue to be surprised every week when I open up a box.
And I know that the space is relatively large, but it's not huge. And I know there's more, right? So is it in an offsite storage somewhere, the rest of it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's almost everything is in offsite storage, because we actually hired a professional design firm to help us redesign the whole space. And hopefully, you said that previous iterations of the library and museum were dungeon-esque, that we're really hoping to steer away from that and have a cohesive story and feel that integrates the library and museum and can be welcoming to both Masons and people connected to the Masonic community and people walking off the street that have no connection, like how I was before I started this job. Um, but to do that, I had to box up everything. And so yes, we have offsite storage for both our library and our museum.
I should clarify too for the audience that I wasn't actually referring to our current location on Bridgeport Way. When I started talking about Dungeon Desk, I was referring to the old, it used to be called the Temple Theater
Mhm.
location in Tacoma, which was never owned by the Grand Lodge of Washington, even though the Grand Lodge of Washington offices were there for a million years. And there were lodge build. It's a Masonic building that was owned by a consortium or some I don't know, syndicate of sorts that were Masons or loosely connected to Masonry. And there were lodge rooms and other lodge facilities in that building at one time, but I actually don't know the real history. That'd be interesting to learn more about that. But yeah, the place where they put the library museum space was, I don't even know if I would call it a basement. It was just this cavernous thing. You had to walk down this crazy staircase to get down to the basement. And it was you could, very pungent odor.
Oh no.
Unfortunately, it was, I don't know if I hope it was just, well, not even, I hope it was water leaks or not, but there was something leaking down there for sure.
Well, if there's an odor, then my collections mind is beeping. There's an
Yes.
issue with mold or something.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's there's so much stuff. How large of a collection is there? I really have no idea.
Yeah. So when I first started, I kind of came in and thought of it as it's a blank space. We don't really have a permanent collection. We have lots of stuff, but um it really was a mix of like very priceless historic artifacts and things that are very, very common and belonged to almost every Mason that was dropped off by loved ones. So what I did was set up a collections committee that every month reviews things and puts them in three different categories, which is this goes into our permanent collection of artifacts. These things can be recycled into the Masonic community, and these things should be disposed of appropriately. So the permanent collection, as we've created it and voted on it so far, is just 850 entries online on our catalog it, but and catalog it is our virtual database. But that is only like 15% of everything that we still need to go through. So it's going to be in the thousands once we're done, but it's going to be a very slow process because it's very important to take our time and vote intentionally on this thing should be in the museum and preserved in perpetuity or not. So it's hard to say how large it's going to be, but it's going to be a lot bigger than what it is. So
For sure. So you mean that paper box full of old monitors, washing monitors? You don't need those?
no, please. The Grand Lodge has asked us not to keep old monitors. So we do keep a sample in the library, but if it's a duplicate, we shred it because we've been asked to by Grand Lodge.
Yeah. There's lots of those. Oh, I thought I was going to ask a question. I was going to interrupt. So I will say, and I don't know if you could do this or not. It would be a tedious job, but we were going through. I don't want to say it was a monitor because then we're going to think we have to look through every single monitor. But there was a box of things that was dropped off at our temple, and so I was going through it, and out dropped a letter that was from this Mason. He had kept it, of course, 50 plus years old, and was like a half sheet that he had trifolded and had kept in this book. And it was his, and this is the importance of good communication, period, but good communication. It was a letter that he said, that was his letter indicating that he had been elected to the degrees of Masonry, that he was to arrive at our building at a certain time and date to receive his degrees. And so when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, we need to reinstitute this, because we don't really do that. Sometimes we'll text a guy or maybe email him or whatever. And so I don't even know that we really still do it or not. But I think some of these kind of meaningful and even old fashioned, if you will, modes of communication are so important. It can be so important for a man to save that and to hold on to it for his life. It was touching to me. And so it was a neat artifact to find and talk about anyway. So yeah, like you said, the stories are really fun.
It's funny you said that because we just accessioned the exact same thing. I'm looking, it was from Charleston Lodge. We found, so we got a box of items from a gentleman who recently passed away. And usually, yeah, we go through every single thing we get to make an intentional choice. But one of the things that was in that was a letter saying that he had been accepted. And this was dated in 1961. I don't know when yours was, but we had never, our collections committee had never seen that letter before. And the other people on the committee had said, we really, I mean, I don't think that's ever, they had never seen anything like that. So we decided to keep it because of its significance and uniqueness.
Our secretary still sends a letter out, hand signed. I wish it was handwritten, but we still do that.
Even this one was typed, but it was obviously on a manual typewriter, and but it was really neat, really neat.
Yeah, not that I want to brag or anything, but our lodge,
he's the secretary. He's the secretary.
Right in that drawer, right there, is the resume paper that I use. That when we elect somebody for the degrees of Masonry, I type them up a letter and mail them a nice resume paper signed letter to.
Oh, that's nice to know. I'm glad that's still going on in some lodges, but yeah, I had never seen it before, so it's now on. This one is now in our collection.
I figure most of them probably end up in a recycle bin somewhere, but So you said something that jogged my brain, and then I lost the thought earlier, but it's back now. When you say that there are things that you dispose of, you're not necessarily shoveling Masonic items into the trash, right? These are items that end up other places, or.
So there's two other categories besides keeping it and putting it in our permanent collection. One is if it's reusable Masonic material, we have what's called an education collection that is made available to any lodge that needs things or any Mason that would need things. We try to make that available for free for people, for Masons in the Masonic community to use. But if it's non-reusable, like a broken cup with the square and compass on it, we have procedures in place to make sure that no like Masonic symbols are going in the trash without being completely destroyed. We have a procedure for every single type of material and how we'll dispose of it. And talking with the Grand Lodge to make sure that the things that we decide to do is appropriate.
Interesting. So, and I know you've talked before about there are some non-Masonic items that have ended up elsewhere.
Mhm.
Can you give us an example of that?
Well,
I'm thinking
like,
of one
so for
specifically. There was a
example,
basket, or
oh yeah, yeah. So we had, when I first started, we had a very large basket, Native American, no, it was Canadian native basket that belonged to a member or a person who had lived in the Masonic home, and it stayed in the Masonic home after they passed away. But there was a note inside saying they had bought it at this specific place, so we knew the context and everything. But besides it belonging to a Mason, it had no Masonic significance. So the collections committee decided to offer it up to another museum. And so I contacted the Burke Museum and they wanted it. So I was able to drive it over there and I took pictures with this really, really awesome basket and felt really good about uh, putting this non-Masonic material somewhere where it could be interpreted and preserved appropriately, because we weren't the right place for it to be.
Reinvesting in the community. That's great.
Mhm.
That's awesome. You talked about that the space is going to be redesigned, which is amazing. I'm so excited to see what that's going to look like. A couple things. One, how long will that take? And then, I guess, other than that, do you have other plans in place to do things? Obviously, you'd love to have $1 million and just go crazy. $1 million probably wouldn't go very far, honestly. But if you had 10 million, I guess, to do whatever you wanted to do, what's next on the agenda besides your kind of day to day, as well as this redesign? What's kind of in the next 5 years or whatever?
Yeah, so the goal, we have a whole calendar in place because we've signed a contract with our design firm, um and they have a great track record of keeping to that calendar. So that's going to be early to mid 2027. And that's in the museum world, that's actually pretty quick. But we're on the smaller side, so it can happen. But yeah, we have the budget in place where we're well funded to make sure that happens. Our leadership team has done a great job of making sure we have that pot placed in, and they prioritize to have that pot in place so that we can do this and do it really well. So yeah, that's exciting. So 2027 is where we're working forward. So that's what, 2 years away. And after that, it's going to be about, continuing to, we'll have rotating exhibit space and trying to build programs in the community, and just keep collecting and preserving and trying to try new things to get the message about Washington Masonry and that history out there in different ways.
Is the offsite location, is it tourable or whatever? Is it something people could potentially go to visit if they wanted to, or is it kind of like just another, like a warehouse that isn't?
Yeah, it's a warehouse. The everything's inventoried, so I know I can find things, but it's not a tourable space. So I did have somebody reach out. I'm giving a tour in the museum next week, but it's going to be very limited. I have some artifacts on site that I can pull out for them. But in this space where everything's offsite and we don't have a public space for people to come to, it's really going to be people reaching out and doing it by invitation only.
Sorry, Matt, and I keep clicking off mute challenge here. If you said you've done about 10 to 50% or so of the overall items, you think, did you start focusing on a particular, like say, oh, let's try and focus on all the books, or let's try and focus on all the aprons, or let's try all the physical items, or was there that kind of, or was it just you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You just whatever's next in front of you. Was there a strategy around that?
There were some things that going through the initial inventory, I'm like, this is I can tell right away this needs to like be in the permanent collection now. So I would prioritize those things. And I really I'm trying to build a collection that's a good representation of everything, like history wise, location wise. So if I can identify like a gap in what we have in our permanent collection so far, I try to focus on that. And it's also kind of fun to just kind of jump around and learn about different things. So like yeah, so like one week I focus on pins, the next I focus on books, the next I'll focus on aprons. I think we were pretty good on aprons right now, but yeah, I guess it's a mix of, I want to focus on this, so I'm going to, and other always also like let me open this box and see what's in here.
Speaking of aprons, how I know you're involved with the Apron Memorial project. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this was has been going on well before I started, and so the Apron Memorial is every year in August, the Grand Lodge does a ceremony to inter all the aprons that have come to the Washington Masonic Library and Museum over the course of the year. And these are master mason aprons that belong to a specific mason who's passed away. And the more I get into it, I've been talking to a lot of my counterpart curators in other jurisdictions, and I haven't come across any example of anyone doing anything similar. So it's kind of a point of pride for me to talk to other curators about it. Like, this is what we're doing, because a lot of curators are grappling with this getting so many aprons and not knowing what to do with it, because you can't accession 200 aprons into your permanent collection. It's not a good use of space. So I think what we do is really special, because we honor the man behind the apron, and we have a set place for them to go, and we kind of send them off in a ceremony, which I think is really special. What the Library and Museum does is every time Grand Lodge is given an apron from a Mason, they bring it down to us, and we catalog it. So we actually, every single apron that comes to us has an entry online that you can go to and see. And then we bag them up and inventory them, and a volunteer goes over to the memorial crypt and puts them in and makes a note of exactly where they are, so we know the locations of each apron. And we do, like this year we did, I think it was 49 aprons, which is a good amount. So I think it's a really, really special program that we do, and I'm really glad to be a part of it.
I've gotten to be a part of that ceremony a couple of times, and it's not a long ceremony by any standard, but it's pretty moving. It's interesting to see, and it's you'll get one or two guys' families will come out in addition to the Masons who are there, and it's an important thing in my opinion. So
yeah, I hadn't been back to that since it started. I was there for the very first one when Sam Roberts started it, and then I hadn't been back until this year, and I didn't know. Something, things, as I say often, things happen as if by magic, and I didn't know that they were going to intern Al Jorgensen's apron this year, and something called me to be there, and I think that's what it was. And both my district deputy, actually, and immediate past district deputy, and myself were all there to be present for that, and it was very moving opportunity to be there. And I really thank you for continuing to support that, and also the Washington Masons that made that happen. That's very important. Matt talked about being on the board, and I wasn't on the board that created the Washington Masonic Charity Services now. I was on the immediate next cycle. So I was one of the second year, if you will, or second. We're on 3-year cycles, right? So that was the first year guys, and then I was the first elected trustee, though, to be on there. When they opened it to be elected, I was the first trustee there. It was really a neat opportunity to see that being stood up and getting going. And so I was so excited to hear that we're getting a curator, because I think I may have gushed on you a little bit when at Lodge Leadership Retreat that I was at two cycles ago. It's now 4 years, and bicentennial for Scottish Rite, and they had Art de Hurros came and gave a tombs tour, he called it, and from the library at the Scottish Rite Temple, and amazing. Of course, he is. I don't know if he has eidetic memory or something, but he just knows every single. He can tell you what page things are on, and. But it was really, really fun, and it's some of the coolest books. And so I've said, wouldn't it be fun to have a kind of a tombs tour, Chelsea version, local? We could have some hors d'oeuvres and hang out, a little tour of the museum, and then have your mini tombs tour of the 5 books or 10 books that you found or the stories. It doesn't even have to be books; it could be other objects and things. It'd be kind of fun, I think. It may be a fundraiser, charge $100 or whatever. Could become a semi-formal or something, and have some wine and keep it away from the books and the materials, but some kind of a fun fundraiser thing. I think that could be an opportunity for fundraising for maybe a specific thing that the library needs.
Anytime I have a captive audience to talk about stuff like this, I'm very happy. So that sounds like a great idea.
Speaking of a captive audience, anyone who's listening to this podcast episode is captive. So if you have any web domains or anything you'd like to promote, now's your opportunity for that.
Yeah. Well, this year we just launched our Facebook page, and it's where I get to kind of go on very in-depth discussions about a certain artifact. Like I get to really nerd out because I get to highlight something in particular and be like, look what we found. Like a couple weeks ago, I posted something about we just recently found a book that belonged to Albert Mackey. It had his notes in it actually, and it had his personal like library symbol and that sort of thing. So it was really exciting to kind of gush out about that, and everyone was like posting like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I got very excited because I love when people react and think it's cool like I do. But yeah, you can follow us on Washington Masonic Library and Museum. And then we also our website is through Washington Masonic Services. It's the library and museum tab on there. So you can see other stuff we gotten going on. Like we have our list of our library world, which is the complete inventory of everything in our library. And then we have our catalog it, which is the complete inventory of everything that's been voted into our permanent collection, and with photographs and information. So you can kind of go deep dive there. And if you have any other questions, you can email me at chelsea@masonscare.org.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsea, for being on the show again. We're unfortunately reached the end of our time here, but thank you very much, Chelsea, for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, sure. Saying thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. We encourage you to check out the masonscare.org. I think is the services website, and there's a tab on there for the museum. There's lots of cool stuff there, and there's pictures and everything, and I've spelunked down it once or twice and been kind of excited about some of the stuff I've seen. But and so please comment on the various media upon which the podcast is, and if you have something really cool that, for instance, a brick that may or may not have come from the remodel of of the White House, if you have something cool, please let us know, or we can pass it on to Chelsea or anything like that. But so anyway, sorry, I went off the tangent yet again. So on behalf of Stephen and David and myself, Chelsea, again, thank you for being here. And thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.